Hey guys, welcome back to the Joy of Wrenching. I'm Les, your friendly neighborhood mechanic, and today I've got a 99 Toyota Tacoma. It's a two-wheel drive, but the things I show you today will be the same for four-wheel drive, also for 4Runners. So what you see here, I'm going to be replacing all the different parts of the front suspension on this Tacoma. Again, it'll be very similar for the 4Runner, so this will be really helpful. Come in here, take a look at this setup right here. If yours looks something like this, then yours is going to be the same procedures that I show. We're going to be doing the upper ball joints, lower ball joints, steering rack, lower control arm, sway bar end links, all kinds of goodies. So stick around and see that. All right, so let's get started. The first thing that we're going to do is we're going to replace the steering rack and pinion on this Tacoma. Again, this will be the same thing for your 4Runner and perhaps even for some of the Tundras. So we're going to get this thing up in the air and I'll show you how easy it can be. It's especially easy to see it for you guys with this two-wheel drive. Everything's out in the open. If you've got a four-wheel drive, a few things will be in the way as far as that front differential and everything, but I'll show the process, and it works the same whether that differential's in the way or not. You just may have to finagle your way around to get to certain things. All right, so let's get started. I want to show you how to remove that steering rack and pinion out from underneath your Tacoma or your 4Runner. This one is a two-wheel drive Tacoma. The same sort of procedure is going to be for your four-wheel drive and your 4Runner as well. This being a two-wheel drive is really nice for you guys because I'm going to be able to show you and get the camera in there and show you all those details of how you get this thing out without that front differential and those CV axles in the way. So I've already had this rack out because I did, as you can see, all the nice shiny bits over here. I've already done the driver's side rebuild of the suspension, and I'm going to walk you through step by step, as I mentioned, the passenger side. But since this rack has already been out, I've reinstalled it so that I can show you, and so I'll be undoing the bolts by hand, okay? But you'll just use a socket because yours will still be tight. But I'm going to give you all the sizes, all the torque specs, all the tips and tricks, so let's get into it. So the first step in removing your rack and pinion is going to be disconnecting your tie rods from your knuckle. And because the new rack and pinion comes with inner tie rods but not outer tie rods, if you've got good outer tie rods, you want to reuse those. If you don't, then replace them. And right now, while this is still attached, is a great time to get you adjustable wrench or the right size socket or wrench. Put on this nut right here. So zoom in right here so you can see which part I'm talking about. You want to get on this nut right here and break it loose. You want to go towards the front of the vehicle on the driver's side to break this loose. And it's about that size. I can tell you what size that is. Just get you an adjustable wrench. And it might be kind of hard to break it loose, but once it's loose, just leave it right there, okay? And we're going to, that'll give us a dimension of how much we need to screw this outer tie rod back in to get onto the new rack. The next step is going to be removing our outer tie rod from the knuckle, and there's a castellated nut. You'll remove the cotter pin and then the nut. I think it's a 19 millimeter, and then whack on it with a hammer right here on this meaty part of the knuckle, and it will release the bond, and you'll see that your outer tie rod will fall out like so. And then you'll just set that aside, and we can go over and do the same on the passenger side. Over here on the passenger side, just like on the driver's side, you want to get you an adjustable wrench, put it on this nut. Come check it out, this one right here. Come look and see which one I'm talking about. You want to put on that nut and you want to break it loose. You're going to go down or back towards the back of the vehicle to break this one loose. And then get on this nut on top of your outer tie rod. Take the little cotter pin out of it. Take this off. Hit right here on the meaty part of your knuckle, and it'll knock it loose and fall away like so. I like to put the nuts back where they go so in case I need them again, we've got them. So before you take out your steering gearbox, we need to make sure that we center up the wheels pointed straight ahead and we want to hold our steering wheel from turning. There's a clock spring inside of this steering wheel that if it goes to rotating too many times, which could happen once we get it disconnected from our steering gearbox, it could break that clock spring, and then all kinds of stuff doesn't work, like your horn, and then it sets off all kinds of crazy lights. So center up your wheels and then take your seat belt and just run it through your steering wheel. Pull as much slack as you can get. Keep on keeping on as long as it'll go. Go through your steering wheel a couple times and then come over here and snap it into the lock. There we go. You may have to move your seat up to get this close enough to where it'll snap in, but that'll keep this from turning when we disconnect it down below. The next piece of this puzzle we need to take off is going to be this connection between where our steering wheel comes down and connects to our gearbox through this rag joint. There's 2 bolts that hold it on. They're 12 millimeters, and I've already undone those, and I'll show you. We'll go ahead and take them completely out. Do yourself a favor also and soak this stuff down with some WD-40 or some kind of penetrant, because sometimes corrosion gets inside of these splines and doesn't want to allow these parts to come apart very easily. So now that you've got those 2 bolts out, you're going to want to slide this up off of the steering shaft. The easiest way that you'll find to do that is to find a punch or a pry bar or a long screwdriver in this case, and then just whack on it with a hammer a little bit and tap it up. And you'll see it'll start moving. You can put it there. Once it starts moving, it should go a lot easier. You can use an air hammer if you got one. There you go. And you want that to come right off. And see how that just slides up the splines on that shaft and slides off of the splines on the gearbox right here. So now this will just hang out there. You can leave it where it's at, and we're free and clear of our steering gearbox. And this is why we tied that steering wheel so it can't turn. See, I can't turn this. If this was not tied up there, if that steering wheel was loose, you could accidentally turn this and get it incorrect orientation, and then also break your clock spring inside of your steering wheel. All right, so the next part of this process of getting that steering rack out is going to be removing our lines, our fluid lines, both the high pressure line and the low pressure line. And since this is a 2-wheel drive truck, you guys are in luck. This is a treat for all of us, actually. I have access to not only get in here and do it really easily for you, but I also can show you really well, which most of the other videos out there can't do. So come in here and let me show you what we're going to do, or what I've already done technically. So these are our fluid lines going up to our power steering pump and reservoir. You've got a low pressure line, which is going to have your little squeeze clamp down here. I moved it up here already. That way I could rotate this. And then you've got your high pressure line, which has got a crimped hose. And those are going to be attached right here. And you're going to need a 17 millimeter wrench to break these things loose and then take them off. And do yourself a favor and get you some of these little silicone plugs or some sort of cap of some kind put in the end of the line so that all of the fluid that's up there in the reservoir and doesn't come running out and make a giant mess, okay? And then also, I've put a cap in here. Oops, I removed it, and you can see it already started to spit some fluid out. But that'll keep that mess from getting all over the place. And the same thing for our low pressure line. You can move your little clamp up just a little bit, and that'll allow you to break this thing loose. You may not even need to move the clamp. I just did in case this needed to spin inside of the hose. 17 millimeter, break it loose, put a cap on the end of the line so it doesn't run all over the place and make a mess. Put some caps on the holes that you just freed up on the gearbox. Keep that from draining out all over the place, and that'll just make your work environment so much nicer. All right, so we have disconnected our steering joint. We have disconnected our fluid lines. We have disconnected our 2 outer tie rod ends. The only thing remaining to take off in order to get this steering rack out of here are the bolts that mount it to the frame. And there are 4. Okay, there's one here. This is a 22 millimeter nut on this side and 22 millimeter head you may have to hold on the other. I've already as I mentioned, I've already taken this thing out, so I just put it back in place for you. There'll be a 22 millimeter nut and a washer on this side that you'll want to take off. And then on this end, we have this little cradle that sort of pinches it up against the frame with a little rubber isolator underneath it. These are 19 millimeter bolts. There's one here and a 19 millimeter nut up here that you'll undo. And then once you get these 19 millimeter nuts and bolts off of there, you can take this cradle and pry it away and take it off. Now notice, as I took it off, the bottom part of this cradle is longer than the upper part. So make sure that you keep that in mind. And the bottom one is where that bolt went through. So just put your bolt in there, keep hold track of it, and then the nut will go up here. And then underneath this, there will be a rubber isolator that you're going to want to reuse on your new rack and pinion. It just comes off and you know, opens up like so, so you can get it on and off. So we're on the front side of the rack, and here's our last bolt that holds it down. It'll be bolted to the frame here with a 19 millimeter bolt. So pull that 19 millimeter bolt out, set it aside. You're going to reuse that. Once you have all the bolts undone on your rack, the cradle over here, this 22 mil here, and the 19 that comes in from up top here. And by the way, if you're working on a 4-wheel drive, it's going to be way easier because that differential is going to be back here in your way. It's going to be way easier to get to this bolt on top just by reaching in and loosening it up from right here. Once you got all those bolts undone, you can take your rack and pull this big long 22 millimeter bolt out a little bit. Give yourself some room. You may have to tap it. I'm hoping I don't have to do that, but this thing will slide forward. Let's get that bolt through. There we go. There we go. You got to get that bolt through the little bushing there. And then the rack itself will come down and we can take it out of the vehicle and set it over here on the ground. All right, so now we've got the old rack out. We've got our new remanufactured unit here, and we need to transfer our outer tie rod ends. The new unit doesn't come with outer tie rod ends. We need to transfer them from the old rack, put them on here. Remember, we loosened up our nuts on the outer tie rod ends so that we can spin these things free, and then we'll count how many spins it takes to get it out of the old rack, and that'll be how many spins it takes to go into the new rack. So we'll do that now. So there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21. There it goes, 21 and a half. Okay, so you can write on there how many it took, and then come over here. You want to put a little bit of anti-seize on these threads. That'll help you or the next guy or the guy that's doing the alignment to make sure that these things go together nice and easily and also come apart nice and easily in the future. All right, so we need to go in 21 and a half turns. So there's a half. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20. 20. But getting it started, it was probably off a little bit. But remember, we didn't move our nut other than just loosening it so that we could get it out. So the nut, wherever that nut is, that's going to be pretty much where you need to be. So we'll go ahead and orient this thing up so that it'll go into the knuckle, and that'll be close enough. This thing will need, and you will need to take your car for an alignment after you do this. This is just to get it as close as possible as we can before we take it to the alignment shop. So now this tie rod end is on. I'll go ahead and do this one. You don't have to see that same procedure. I'm going to count how many times it spins coming out. We'll put it back in with a little anti-seize, and then this will be ready to go back up into the car. We got our new, or technically in this case, we've got our new old outer tie rods spun in to the amount of turns that they were on the old rack. Now we've tied our steering wheel centered in the middle, and that way the wheels were pointed straight to begin with. And we took this thing out and we counted how many threads we got on the outer tie rods. All of that keeps everything centered. Now we need to make sure that the guts of the steering rack are centered. And so the way that we do that, because it may not come that way out of the box, especially remanufactured, is you'll grab yourself a pair of vice grips or something, just lightly grab hold of this steering shaft. I'm not deeply marring these splines. You don't want to mess up these splines because we're going to have to put that steering shaft back on it. But once you get something on there to where it'll allow you to turn it, you want to turn it all the way to one side. Okay? So there it goes. That's to one lock. And then we're going to count how many times it takes to get to the other lock. Okay? So there's 1, 2, 3 and a half. 3.5 turns lock to lock. So we need to take half of that number. So half of 3.5 is 1.75. So take and go back 1.75 turns. So there's 1 turn, 1/2 turn, and about 0.75. So that's 1.75. So that is as close to centered up as the guts of this steering rack need to be. So everything should be aligned, and this thing is ready for us to go and put back up in the truck. All right, time to put our new steering rack up in place. So just like when we took it down, we're just going to finagle it in here in between our sway bar and our frame. May take a little angling of the dangling, but I find that it's easiest once you get it up in place to set this little tab on the backside of it into the little place it goes there, and then push the big 22 millimeter headed bolt through. That holds everything up in place. And I'm going to go ahead and take my washer and my 22 millimeter nut and just get that started so it can't fall off. And then here in the middle, coming down from above, we got that 19 millimeter bolt. So I'm going to just thread that right down in there. Kind of finagle it around until I can feel that it's starting to get threaded into it, and it is. So we got it started by hand. Now we can go ahead and put our old cradle back in place. First thing first, we need this little bushing. Slide that over it, kind of pull it out, center it up like so, and then you got your cradle. Remember, the long side of the cradle goes to the bottom. So set that up here, over the stud. And then the bolt goes in the bottom, like that. And then the nut up top. Those are both 19 millimeter. There we go. And now, this thing is in place, we can start to come over here and put our tie rod ends in. We're not tightening anything up yet. We're just getting everything back where it belongs. Come on this side, and we'll do the same thing with this side. And if we did our job right, everything should be pretty darn close to lined up for the alignment. Oh. Come on now. Get over there. There we go. There's that. Start that. Now that can't fall out. All right, and let me get the torque specs for all my attachment points. All right, so these 19 millimeter bolts, there's 3 of them. There's the bolt here, the nut up top, and then the bolt that comes down from above. Those get tightened to 123 foot-pounds. And then this 22 millimeter nut here gets tightened to 141 foot-pounds. I'm just gonna suck everything up, not torquing it, just bringing it on home. All right, so we've got our attachments to the frame, nice and tight. Then the tie rod ends to the knuckle. That gets attached at 67 foot-pounds. So we'll go ahead and close that up with our impact, and then we'll tighten it final with our torque wrench, 67. All right, so next thing we want to do is we have our steering rack centered up, and we're going to go ahead and lower this rag joint and try and get it back over the splines of the new steering rack. So you just pull it down, kind of wiggle it, and it'll sort of go down over those splines, push it all the way to the bottom until your lower bolt can go through and start threading in on the other side. If that's not able to thread in on the other side, then this isn't down far enough. And then you want to put your upper bolt likewise in here and get it started by hand. These are 12 millimeter, and I'll get you a torque spec for these as well. So these pinch bolts on the steering shaft here get tightened to 26 foot-pounds. I'm just going to suck them up with a electric ratchet here. There we go. And I'll tighten them up with the torque wrench. All right, and the final thing that we're going to do with our new steering rack is attach the lines. So I'm going to take these nice little plugs they put in the fitting areas, keep them clean. I'll go ahead and pull those out of here. There we go. And hopefully those are in good shape. Yeah. I don't think that this takes any kind of O-ring, so it should be good to just reconnect everything the way that it came apart. So we've got our high pressure line, which goes here, and then we'll have our low pressure line, which goes back there. So now we're going to need to take these little plugs out that we put in place, and when we do so, of course, all the mess is going to come down. So I've got a little catch basin here to catch the mess and get that so it doesn't make a mess of my floor. There we go. There we go. There's that low pressure line. I'm going to take it up here and just set it in place. And you always want to start these things by hand so you don't cross thread things. There we go. And that's a 17 millimeter. It started into the threads there. And now it's filling up the gearbox and running out of the high pressure side. So I'm going to go ahead and take the little plug out of my high pressure side here. And I'm going to set it also in place and get those threads started on it by hand. Hopefully you guys can see what's going on here. But if yours is anything like that, it'll go nice and slick. Clean those threads up if it's not. That way you can make it as easy on yourself as possible. Now that that's in place, you can tighten it up as much as you can by hand, which I'll do now. You might need to wiggle the pipe while you tighten it up by hand. There we go. And then you'll use your 17 millimeter wrench. I think there's a torque spec of something like 30 foot-pounds, but chances are you're not going to get a torque wrench in here to do that. Just get it good and snug. There we go. That's good. And then I'm going to get this other line back here. 17 millimeter wrench. Probably should have done it first, but I didn't want to make too much of a mess letting it run out all over the place. Let me get the light over here so you can see maybe a little bit better what I'm doing. Just trying to tighten up this fitting on the low pressure line. And we ought to see it quit running fluid out when we get it good and tight. If we've done our job right and the new part's not leaking. But these remanufactured parts, you just never know what you're going to get. Let me get a stubbier wrench for that. All right, I got me a stubby wrench kit in here. You may find it easier to snug these things up if you can get in here with a different size wrench. There we go. Again, the torque spec on this is like 30 foot-pounds, so just get it good and tight. There we go. Yeah. See how that. All right. Now I'm going to dry these things off, these fittings off, and then we're going to move our little pinch clamp here back down to the other end where it went. See if I can get it with this here pair of needle nose. Yeah, that'll work. Right about there. Try to put it back in the place where it came from. Minimize leaks best you can. And again, We're going to dry this area up real good and probably hose it off with a little brake clean. That way we can see if there's still any leaks going on. Now, if we see any more redness coming out of here, we know that we've still got a leak. Of course, that brake clean is taking off that paint from the remanufacturing process, but no big deal. Doesn't have to be pretty. I don't see any leaks right now, but of course it's not under pressure. We'll check it out when we get it under pressure. But that, my friends, is a new steering rack put up in place. As you can see, not too big of a deal. You could do this. You can do it on your driveway. You don't need a rack. I just did it this way so that you could see all those nitty-gritty details. All right, so now that we've got our new steering rack in place, we need to take and purge the air out of the system. So we'll take off the cap here. And if you read the cap, it'll tell you that you can use Dexron ATF for the fluid. And then we had red fluid running out of it, so that's what was in it. And we're going to go ahead and top this thing off. And then we're going to rotate the steering wheel back and forth, lock to lock, without the car on. Just rotate the steering wheel back and forth, lock to lock, until all the little air bubbles come out of the system. Now you'll know that you got all the air bubbles out of the system because it will quit drinking fluid to fill up those void spaces inside of the lines and everything. And it's usually a good idea to go ahead and put this back on, or else it'll bubble up over the top and make a big mess. All right, so let me go in the car now. Come check this out. All right, so now I'm going to get in the car and I'm going to turn the wheel all the way to one side and then all the way to the other. This is where we unlock the steering wheel with our handy dandy steering belt, seat belt. Now, the car's not on. I'm just turning it all the way to one side till it hits the lock. Then I'm going to go all the way to the other side. And you want to do this, I don't know, 10 times, 15 times, who knows, a lot. And then you go check the level of fluid. Go check the level of fluid. So I'm going to do this a few times, and then I'm going to check that level. So now that we've done this with the engine off, we've turned the wheel lock to lock until it quit drinking transmission fluid, power steering fluid. Now you can start the car and do the same thing. You'll hear the pump whine if you let all the fluid drain out, but because I plugged all those lines, really not a lot of fluid was lost to begin with. So this thing didn't take very much transmission fluid to fill it back up, but just keep turning the wheel lock to lock. It helps if it's up in the air off the front anyway, makes it a lot easier. And that will get the air out of the system. If it foams up, just let it settle for a couple hours and then come back and do it again. No big deal. But that'll get that going. So there we go. Not too bad, huh, guys? I know it seems like a lot, but it's like eating an elephant. Just one bite at a time. With the right tools, the right attitude, you can do this at your home all by yourself. And hopefully the tips and tricks that I showed you guys will save you headaches. And by doing this job yourself, you definitely will save a ton of money. So check out the links in the description to the parts, to the tools. And I really appreciate you guys' time today. Hopefully it was worth it. Thank you. Have a wonderful week. God bless you and all that you do.